Members, we now turn to the Tariff Free Trade Agreement between New Zealand and the Republic of Korea Amendment Bill. And the question is that Clause 1 stand part. And I'll just remind members, this is a clause-by-clause debate, and the clauses are very narrow. The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, the Tariff Free Trade Agreement between New Zealand and the Republic of Korea Amendment Bill is a short and straightforward bill, and the clauses are actually interdependent. There are two main things that it does. It amends the Tariff Act and it amends the notes to the tariff. What it does, first of all, is enable preferential tariff rates to apply to the Republic of Korea, and that is in order to implement the free trade agreement that was negotiated in Seoul earlier this year. It also allows for transitional safeguard measures to be applied if there's a surge in imports and there is a danger to New Zealand producers. Sir, it's important to say that the tariffs that apply to the Republic of Korea are currently low and they're few. If I was to find a couple of examples, you'd look at things like washing machines and car tyres. They have a tariff of 5%. What we know about a tariff of 5% is that it's not much protective help at all to New Zealand industry. It's easily traded over, and the removal of that tariff is not going to have much impact on any New Zealand enterprise, most particularly because the free trade agreements we already enjoy with countries like China have taken away those tariffs, and if the industries were at risk, then they would be at risk from much larger trading entities than Korea itself. The transitional safeguard mechanisms are there in case there is a surge of imports that would devastate a New Zealand production line. But as long as I can remember, sir, though we've put these in all of our free trade agreements, I don't think we have ever evoked those safeguard mechanisms, so they are not going to be of great importance either. So in essence, sir, the argument is with the clauses that are under consideration that they will do no harm to New Zealand manufacturing, but by contrast, the removal of many tariff lines imposed on New Zealand exports to the Republic of Korea are quite valuable to our exporters as well as to Republic of Korea consumers. Let's just take a look at some of the examples of what the trade-off is for giving preferential access to Korean goods. Wine, for example, a growing export to Korea, it previously or currently has a tariff of 15%. That will be gone on entry. And obviously, if we get this bill through the House as quickly as possible, we will have the removal of tariffs immediately, and then we'll have the removal of tariffs at the beginning of the next calendar year. So there is some importance in passing this legislation without unduly delaying it. Then you have lines of New Zealand exports that face much higher tariff levels than that. Kiwi fruit, for example, face tariffs of 45%. Our main competitor in the Korean market is Chile. Their tariffs have been phased out altogether. So you can see the competitive disadvantage that New Zealand kiwi fruit exporters are under. This agreement will be of real benefit to them. Butter has a tariff level of 89%. It will be phased out over a 10-year period. Cheese, 36%, phased out over a 12-year period. Wood, 10% phased out over 10 years. Salmon, 20% tariff level phased out over 4 years. So the estimates that the Select Committee got on the value of the removal of tariffs was, I think from memory, in the first year was about $68 million in savings to New Zealand exporters. Ultimately, the savings would amount to around $229 million per annum. The essence of these changes are that this is a deal that is worth having. It's not, sir, because it will give us competitive advantage. Unlike the China Free Trade Agreement, we don't have first mover advantage. This is actually about catch-up. It's about catch-up with other major exporters into Korea who are competing with New Zealand exporters who have already got a free trade agreement, who have already got the benefits that we have negotiated in this deal. So they are major countries. They're countries like the United States, Australia, Canada, China, the European Union, the ASEAN countries. Mr. Chairman.
I call the Honourable Phil Goff.
About Chile. These are countries that, if we do not get this agreement, will be able to defeat our ability to get major exports into Korea. I've got to say, sir, having given that praise to the agreement, it doesn't meet the definition in my mind of high quality and comprehensive, which the China and then the Taiwan free trade agreements got. And I regret that. This is not just a personal opinion, it's the opinion, I think, that Russell McVeigh, which are experts in this area, have said that those expecting this agreement to achieve results similar to those with the free trade agreement with China will be disappointed. And, sir, I think we're bound to say that, as well as the winners that I've just elaborated on, there are losers in this. The losers include milk powder, where there is a tariff level, I think, of 176%, which continues on those exports that are out of the quota. The quota will go up, but there will be milk powder exports that are paying a phenomenally high tariff level. There's frozen deer velvet. 75% of our exports to Korea of deer velvet are frozen, and Korea is our biggest single market. They still have a 15% tariff, and there is no move in the changes that come out of the free trade agreement that will take that away. Fresh abalone, frozen squid, they face 22% tariff lines, and again, they appear to remain in perpetuity in terms of our exporters of those goods to Korea. So those things will be disappointing, and I'm not saying that the Minister and the Chair didn't do his best. I have absolute confidence that he did his best on that deal, but it is a step down from the agreements that we got with China and with Taiwan. Having said that, I think it's important to take what's on the table. Korea is our 5th largest market for our export of goods to other countries. It's a trade that over the last 5 years or so has been growing at around 10% per annum. It is a large market, 51 million people. It's an increasingly affluent market. It's also the world's 13th largest economy and 8th largest trading market. So, as well as the advantages of some of the primary commodities that I've mentioned, sir, there are advantages in terms of our export of manufacturing goods, for instance, aviation, medical devices, precision and marine engineering. There are advantages in the service sector to education, legal and other professional services. So, when you weigh the pros and cons of the deal up, then you come to the conclusion that if we don't take this deal, we will become increasingly uncompetitive in the Korean market. We would be foolish not to take the deal on the table. And I think that any party considering opposing this deal has got to get up and explain why we would walk away from something that is of real net advantage to New Zealand. The Labour Party won't be, it will be supporting this measure. I think in some of the opposition, certainly in submissions, came as a result of this deal being a surrogate for the Trans-Pacific Partnership and opposition to investor-state dispute settlement provisions. Actually, we don't need these with Korea, sir. You need ISDS provisions where you are trading or investing, rather, in a country that doesn't have the rule of law, where our investors cannot enforce their contracts through the court and judicial systems of the country in which they're operating under. Nobody has ever made that suggestion of Korea. Korea does have the rule of law. We actually don't need it there. And the only reason that it is in there, when we quizzed officials on it, is that they said that it is there in the insistence of the Republic of Korea. The ISDS provisions follow closely those that we put into the ASEAN and China deals, And over the years, and there's been, 7 years since we negotiated that deal and I signed it in Beijing, we haven't had any problems. Those provisions are carefully drafted so as to leave room for the New Zealand government to legislate in the public good on areas like environment and health. Provided you don't discriminate between your trading partners, you're not likely to get into trouble. We support this deal, sir. We've got a proud track record ourselves of negotiating free trade agreements, but we oppose one aspect of the bill, and that is the omission to allow us to regulate and legislate on the sale of residential.
Order. I'm going to take a point of order in a moment, but before I do, when we're on a clause-by-clause debate, we have to follow the clauses as per the bill. And order. I'm referring to the, and while it's good background material that you've given us, clause 1's actually the title, and on a clause-by-clause debate, we actually have to speak to the clause. So I know what's going to come, but all right. And I didn't want to interrupt your 10-minute speech because it was very informative and it certainly set the scene. So, now, point of order to McIndoe.
Point of order, Mr Chair, and this will come as a surprise of the century. Mr Chair, I seek leave for all clauses of the Tariff Free Trade Agreement between New Zealand and the Republic of Korea Amendment Bill to be debated as one question with the votes on each clause to be taken separately.
Lee, the question is that all provisions of the debate be taken as one question for the purposes of the debate and that separate questions be put at the end. Leave is sought for that purpose. Is there any objection? No. All right, there's no objection. The question now is that the clauses 1 to 8 stand part. Do you want to go? I call the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It's a great pleasure to take a call in the committee stage of this Tariff Free Trade Agreement between New Zealand and the Republic of Korea Amendment Bill and to convey